Welcome to the Metis Group Small Talk, Big Results. Why one-on-ones matter. For those of you who haven't been with us before, you can plan on this being about 30 minutes long. We often say between 30 or 40 minutes, but we have to skate to the airport right after this, so it's going to be a lot closer to 30. That may impact how many questions we can take on the end. So if you have questions, please put them into chat, and we'll try to get them as we go along if we don't have time at the end. Also, we're going to provide you at the very end a QR reader that you can give us some feedback. If you give us some feedback, we will be able to send you an ebook on one-on-ones. And you will get a thank you message for having registered. And with that message, you will go to our brand new Webcasts landing page, which will give you the recordings and other resources and stuff that you might enjoy. Did I leave anything out?
Yeah, the slides will be on that page as well as some other articles that are about one-on-ones as well. So what we're going to be doing moving forward is creating a resource page for each one of our webcast topics that will be up there for everyone to continue to access.
Mm-hmm.
So let's share the screen and start off, huh? One-on-ones, today's topic, right?
Yes.
Probably the most important meeting you'll ever have, right?
Well, but how many times are these one-on-ones postponed or kicked down the road or, I talk to my employees all the time anyway, why do I need to schedule a one-on-one with them? So let's dig into it. As we think about the power of these one-on-ones, most folks who do, not all, some know the secret sauce already, but most folks find that they turn their one-on-ones into status meetings, which is really what's the status of your project, this project or that project or whatever. What we find is the power in the one-on-ones is if this is focused more on the relationship, far less about the projects. And we'll give you some tips about those, some things that we found that work along the way, and how to appreciate or why to appreciate that the whole person comes to work.
Right. I mean, in all the work we do, if there's one leadership practice, just one that we would recommend leaders undertake, it would be doing one-on-ones with their direct reports. Feedback is important, performance management is important, setting goals, scorecards, all that's important, but the one-on-one trumps them all.
When you guys think about your best leaders you've ever had over time, or professors or teachers who've had the biggest impact on you, the ones who you always wanted to do more for, prove your best, whatever, those are ones who probably made the time to get to know you personally, who developed some relationship with you, who really got the best out of you.
And one of the things that we want to emphasize throughout this conversation is when we're talking about our direct reports and our team members, it's the whole person that comes to work, not just the person who does the work, but there's a lot of personnel consideration to keep in mind when you're dealing with people at work, and the one-on-one is a perfect way to help us understand the whole person.
Oftentimes when I'm giving presentations to Vistage or EO members or executive forum, I'll start with asking people, consider what would have happened if last night your sister or brother gave you a call and said, okay, we got to get together tomorrow. We can't kick this down the road anymore. We just had a major incident. Mom or dad has got to have alternative living. They can no longer live by themselves. Not only is that going to interrupt your thought processes through the night and the next day, but this is going to weigh heavy on you and your family until that entire transition is made over the course of the next several months. To think that that isn't going to impact your work is ridiculous. Or even if it's something as simple as on your ride into work, you get a phone call from the principal saying, can you come talk to me at 3:00 this afternoon about little Johnny's work? That's going to interrupt you a couple of times throughout the day. And so we need to understand that the whole person comes to work. And the better foundational relationship that we have with our direct reports and the more trust we've established, the easier it is for them to keep us apprised of real life that's happening. Not to give us too much information, but real life that's happening so that we can consider that as we're delegating massive projects, as we are understanding that they're just a little distracted and things along those lines.
Yeah, and I think it's even more important today where we talk about not just work-life balance, but work-life integration.
Sure.
And it's that integrated work and life that can be better understood through regular meetings and one-on-ones.
Mm-hmm. So, of course, those of you who aren't as familiar with us, hard to believe, March 5th will be our 29th year in business. And after the first 10 years in Detroit, 19 years ago in March, actually, I made my first trip down to Charlotte, and that's when business started happening here. And we went back and forth for 15 of the last 19 years, and now have moved fully into Charlotte, North Carolina area. We still have some team members and a part-time office in Metro Detroit, but we consider ourselves North Carolinians. Over the years, our service offerings have evolved. They've gotten stronger. We still do things in selection, but it's really more coaching our clients in how to implement better processes on their own, essentially teaching them to fish for the superstars instead of handing them fish. And then our Leadership Academy additionally includes a lot of other programs that focus on developing the leader. Because if you've hired the superstar to begin with and you're not getting superstar performance out of them, it might be the person in the mirror. So, we talk a lot about the first round NFL draft pick, and we've talked about this analogy a lot, but it's the best college athlete in his entire class across the country. And I've yet to hear somebody give me the name of one who had a stellar first year in the NFL. But we've changed everything about them. We've changed their boss, their coworkers, their playbook, their rule book. We've relocated them, changed their conditioning, their nutrition. And when 3 months after graduation, they aren't pulling the worst team in the league out of the ashes like a phoenix, we think, that person can't be that great. When it might be everything that as leaders we've done around them, and what can we do to remove some of that friction and really help them excel.
Yeah, so if you haven't checked out the Leadership Academy, the one-on-ones are just one part of all the different service offerings in the Leadership Academy. There's lots of information and tips there to support your leadership development. So what is the biggest challenge around the one-on-ones?
Another meeting? Oh my God. Like, I don't have time for this. How many times do we hear that? Actually, in the long run, it actually saves you time. Your direct reports will always make time to find you for the important and urgent items. What the one-on-ones allow you to do is to make time for the important, not urgent. Wouldn't it be nice to tackle things before it becomes a crisis, or to hear them simmering before they are boiling over? And so people will find you for the important and urgent, but if you can actually have time dedicated to go into some of those things that are important, not urgent, at your own pace, it'll save you a lot of interruptions and time later on.
Yeah, we've actually had leaders who've tracked how much time it has saved them, both in putting out fires and additional meetings by having the regular one-on-ones. And I remember one leader telling me, wait a second, I've got 8 direct reports. If I'm doing a half hour, that's 4 hours a week. You want me to be in these one-on-one meetings? And we said, yes. And so reluctantly, he went ahead and did that. And he came back and mentioned that 4-hour investment in one-on-ones more than offset the time savings in other issues that he would have had to deal with.
Not to mention the exasperation of constantly getting interrupted because he wasn't very patient with that. And then the last thing, believe it or not, we do hear some leaders say, I don't really want to get to know my direct reports, which means they maybe shouldn't be in leadership because that's really what it's about. It isn't about doing more yourself. It's really about finding ways to help all of your direct reports excel in whatever they're doing. And so we'll talk about it, but there are some direct reports who like give you way too much information or can't shut up. And so if you let them understand what the agenda is and how you're going to approach it and what time frame to set aside, and that you're going to stick to that time frame, that can help you kind of put some borders and boundaries around how much you really need to get to know your direct reports.
So if you skip it, it's going to cost you in the long run. Trust is the number one attribute that is going to lead to a successful relationship between the leader and their direct reports. And it's through this regular meeting rhythm that that foundational trust can be established and keep things aligned and avoid issues that will come up or larger issues that could have gotten addressed in the one-on-one meetings.
Mm-hmm. And the trust piece is big because it allows people to talk more openly about what's going on. I've been around for decades, and when I was in my 20s, I remember my mentor, the best boss I ever had, knew I was dealing with a whole bunch of infertility stuff, and I had a particularly difficult day, and I was trying to plow through an affirmative action plan. And I remember him sitting down with me and telling me about a kind of a crisis he had with a daughter at her birth, and opening up about how he felt and what he did and what he was going through with that, and just letting me know he could feel the anguish and he understood. And it allowed me much more calmly to talk to him about, I gotta go run down to Detroit for another blood test or whatever, and not feel all choked up about it. I could be more open and honest with him, and I'm like, I'll make up that other thing or tell him what I was doing at different times. I wasn't trying to hide or sneak around and stuff to get some of this stuff done. And the trust that we had developed over time, we still kind of keep in touch. And this was, like I said, we're just gonna say decades ago, not date everything.
This is another example of the whole person comes to work. It's just not the worker. It's all the different parts of your life are at the workplace. So we going to give you a little quiz, and this is kind of a fun little exercise that we like to do that helps drive home the value of a one-on-one. So
grab a piece of paper. If you didn't see that little note in your reminder for today, then get your phone and open up an email to yourself. Just something you can.
So just something you take. Jot a couple of notes down on. So the first thing we'd like you to do is on your sheet of paper, just list out a handful of the direct reports that you have. Then you don't have to have a lot of them, just a couple, 2 or 3. List out their names.
Up to 5 is usually the exercise.
Just to get a feel for the
who's who, because
right.
Step 2 is going to relate to each of them individually.
So you list out your direct reports' names. The next thing for each direct report, what we'd like you to do is next to each direct report's name, put down the name of their significant other or their spouse. So if you've got a handful or 5 direct reports, list out who the 5 spouses are for those direct reports or significant others, right?
If they're insignificant, don't worry about them.
Yeah. All right, so that gives you an idea how well you might know them. The next thing you want to do is next to each one of your direct reports that you've listed, indicate the names of their children. Not only would you like to know the name of their significant other or their boss, but do you know the names of each of their children for the direct reports?
Do you mean spouse, or are you assuming some spouses are bosses?
Could be. All right, so you've got the list of direct reports, you've got their spouses, you've got their children, hopefully. The next thing we'd like you to do next to each one of the direct reports is indicate whether or not you know their hobbies or their interests.
That's the hobbies or interests of direct reports, not the spouse or kids. We're letting you off the hook a little.
Yeah, so what do your direct reports like to do, and what are they interested in, and how do they spend their time outside of the workplace?
We have a couple of budding botanists on our team. One really likes outdoor plants. One really likes indoor plants. We have others who love scrapbooking.
Yep.
And we have everybody's kind of a DIYer. Nope. Sarah knows how to dial a good phone number for contractors.
All right, so you've got your direct reports listed. You've got their significant other listed, their children if they have any listed. Hopefully you understand the hobbies and best interest. Here's the tough one. Next to each one of your direct reports, do you know the name of their pets?
Funny, I was at a Vistage session recently, and this one guy started laughing when he got to this point, and he said, "What does it say about me if I know all of their pets, but I struggled on spouse and kids?" clearly a man after my
So
own heart.
I was doing this session recently and somebody said, why do I need to know the names of their pets? And I said, what do you think the type of direct report you're going to have show up for work if that morning they had an issue with their pet or they had to hospitalize or maybe even move their pet on? What kind of employee is going to show up that day? And if you know the pet and you've got that relationship, you can develop some empathy towards that.
For sure.
So hopefully you've been able to answer all of these questions. We guarantee you that after doing regular one-on-ones, you will know your direct reports well enough to answer all of these questions.
Please don't just take your list and go into your one-on-one and go, hey, I got some blanks here. What are the name of your kids again? That's not what this is about. But in a session where we can have more interactivity, I often ask, why do you think we put you through that exercise? And everybody's like, so we know how much we understand our direct reports. Yes, but why is that important? And it goes back to the whole person comes to work. And if you don't know those basics, then it's really going to be a challenge. So we'll give you a format that will help you uncover these over time. Don't try to just fill in the blanks the next time you meet.
Yeah, and one of the things we recommend is having those regular weekly one-on-ones. And if you have them scheduled, then it just automatically builds a trust and strengthens a relationship. And it creates a spot for conversation that probably wouldn't normally take place throughout the week. And having that set on everyone's calendar allows for some of those conversations that would be difficult otherwise.
And John and I approach it a little bit differently. John isn't as client facing as I am, so his one-on-ones tend to be, every Monday at 3 o'clock is this person's one-on-one. Because I do a lot of client facing and a lot of travel, I don't necessarily have that luxury, and my direct reports are also client facing. So what we typically do is we may confirm at the end of this one-on-one what's going to be our meeting time next week, so that we can adapt to whatever's going on. But I shouldn't say never. I'm sure over 29 years there's been a time. I try to avoid canceling at all costs, but we will sometimes move it if necessary. If something's happened in either situation, we'll try to move that.
So one of the things that we get asked regularly when leaders commit to doing a one-on-one is, what do we talk about? What do we talk about for 30 minutes, week after week after week after week? And we recommend that you divide the meeting into 3 different parts, and generally about 10 minutes in each one of these areas. And we recommend that to begin the meeting off, you keep it really light and casual and personal, and get to know each other a little bit. Talk about the weekend, talk about the hobbies, talk about what the spouse or the kids might be up to. That first 10 minutes is more that personal check-in part of the meeting.
And the first time you're meeting with some people who may be introverts, this could be a little bit longer or a little painful. One of our direct reports ages ago was very reserved, and she kept things very close to the vest. And so I remember the first meeting with her and saying, so how was your weekend? Good. What'd you do? Went to the movies. What did you see? Did you like it? Like, it took forever. Over time, it wasn't nearly as painful, but she just had to build that trust, because even talking about her weekend in the beginning was very uncomfortable for her. So we might have spent a little bit more time, because it took more time for me to ask enough questions. And, oh, by the way, I had to share a little bit as well to open up, just like my boss did with me when he was trying to let me know it was okay, right? So those things are important. I know out of a lot of the folks who had registered for this session, many of you have been through Sandler Sales. This is the part we would call bonding and rapport. That's the part you're doing here in the first 10 minutes or so.
Well, similarly, for extroverts, this tends to be a little bit longer in some cases. So
telling
you got
10 minutes.
Exactly. It helps in both those who are talkative and not quite so talkative. The second part of the meeting, we suggest be more of a what's happening, how can we help, what obstacles might you be experiencing. The leader, this is their opportunity to cascade messages that are happening within the organization. It's more a kind of about the working relationship in this part of the meeting.
It's critical, though, not to derail the one-on-one by diving too deep into issues. So in this section, I often ask, what's up and where are you stuck? And oftentimes the response is, I'm not stuck yet, but good, let's talk before you are stuck and it's really, an all hands on deck. Now, if it is something I can just address and it's an obstacle to be removed or a resource to be deployed very quickly, we can deal with it. If it's not, it's long enough for me to get a feel for what's going on and say, okay, let's come back at 3 o'clock this afternoon, book a full hour. We're just going to dive deep into this issue and make sure that we can get you unstuck and on your way.
Yeah, the key is, you're right, not to get bogged down. And those of you who are on EOS and are familiar with L10 meetings, oftentimes issues that get put onto the IDS list come from this part of the one-on-one meeting. So you just want it to be more of a what's going on and how can we make things better.
Status meetings, though, so status meetings aren't bad. They just don't replace one-on-ones. So it may be time for that. And then the third part is, how are you coming on your development plan? Of course, this assumes you have a development plan. If you don't, well, that's a webcast we need to put together. So we can share with you some formats for development plans, but there should always be measurable and time-based goals on the development plan. Anything that benefits their relationship with you or the organization. So that could include getting my cholesterol under control. It could include getting better sleep so I have more energy in the workplace. It could include improving my leadership development. But how will we know? What will be the measurable time-based goal? Well, we'll get more projects done on time and on budget, or 3 projects done on time and on budget by the end of second quarter or something. So something that you can say, well, what are the steps you have taken to get there? Because otherwise, the answer you're going to get to how are you coming on your development plan is fine, because there is no real plan.
And I like to use this part of the one-on-one to talk about the books that we're reading, or the podcasts that we're listening to, or some of the online courses that we're taking. The whole idea at this part of the meeting is to emphasize the growth part of the relationship, and that it's just as important for the leader to make sure that their direct report has the resources that they can continue to grow.
And one of the things that we always tell people is it really should only take 20 to 30 minutes. If you do this once a week, you'll have enough meeting rhythm, you're flying. It also gives you an opportunity to spot something's off. This isn't the same whole person I've talked to for the last couple of weeks. Something's off. And if you've built that trust, you can say, hey, what's going on? You don't seem like yourself today. And with any luck, you'll get some honest answers.
Yeah, and you'll find out that at the beginning, it may be a little bit longer than 30 minutes, but after you're going, it's really easy to stay within that time frame. The other question we get asked a lot on one-on-ones is, how do you do them, or where do you hold them at? And there really isn't a good answer. What I would recommend not doing is having the leader sit behind their desk and the direct report on the other side of the desk, and it becomes sort of a parent-child type of conversation.
For sure.
We recommend getting out and going for a walk, going to the coffee location within your work, or outside.
At least sit sideways from the desk.
Yeah.
Use the desk as a barrier between you two, because technically that's what it is. So that's really key, is to create an open, easy environment. So it was probably one of our direct reports a couple of years ago. Michael had said, let's take the dog for a walk. Okay. And so we started walking around with the dog. So
yeah, we happen to be in a business park here that makes it really nice to be able to go for a short 30-minute walk and have that conversation when the weather's nice. One of my favorite stories from Steve Jobs, he love him or hate him as a leader, he was a big fan of one-on-one meetings. And as they were building the Apple campus, he wanted to make sure that there was ample space for people to walk and have their one-on-ones within the campus that they were building. So we actually, as a part of their campus design, created walking paths and space for one-on-ones.
One of our poster children for one-on-ones, Mike, was great about being very faithful about them. Now his were 1 hour long each month. He was the CEO, and he would spend 1 week going over development plans, which he usually held in the office, and the other ones were on the relationship piece, and that was where they always went out of the office someplace.
So the other question we get once people understand the format and where and how to do it is, how do they start? How did we go from having all these direct reports without a structured one-on-one system to more structured way of meeting? And if you have the opportunity to download the one-on-one ebook, there's actually a memo or an email that we include in the ebook that a leader can send to their direct reports who are beginning the one-on-one process that explain to them how it works.
You can tweak it to put it in your own voice for sure, but there's a sample.
Right, but the whole idea is to start slow. Maybe you do it with a couple of direct reports, maybe not the whole team. I will warn you, if you are going to do it with one or two and not the whole team, the rest of the team is going to want they're going to want their one-on-one very quickly. So sometimes it's easier to begin with just a couple, but know that before long, you're going to have to do it for everybody.
If you do just identify a couple, please make it your superstars. They are the ones you cannot afford to lose. And if you remember, 80% of the work gets done by 20% of the people. You need to make sure your 20% are most happy. So I would take your superstars to do the one-on-ones with, because it's hard to believe, but they're capable of even more.
And one recommendation we have for those leaders who are not able to have a set time week after week for their one-on-one, and it happens to be a little bit more variable, let the direct report be the one who does the scheduling of the one-on-one. Let them take the responsibility for finding time on each of your calendars and taking the lead and making sure that happens. At the end of the day, they want it almost more than you do anyway. So let them take the responsibility for that meeting.
And psychologically, it changes the dynamic. Instead of being called into the principal's office, but because you set the meeting, it's their request to spend time with you. So they automatically will come more engaged because they were initiating.
And if you have to reschedule or cancel, we understand that happens. It's very disruptive to the relationship. My approach is I'd like to do them weekly, but if I can get 3 a month, I feel pretty good. 2 a month or 1 a month, I think that would be a disappointment. 4 a month would be really, really good. But if we can make 3 a month happen, I think we did good.
Don't forget, the less frequently you have them, the longer they'll need to be.
Right.
Bonding and rapport takes longer. Catching up on what's been happening takes longer. What's up where you stuck everything takes longer. So we recently were working with a wonderful group up in upstate New York, the DeMarco Group, a family of companies, and there's several companies. Ryan Byers is part of DeMarco Constructors. He's on this call, as are several of his colleagues and cohorts. And they went through the Leadership Essentials playbook for group. We had a large portion of them who all went through the structured learning workshops and then had one-on-one coaching and some practical application time. And Ryan was so excited with his coach, Donna. He was raving about the difference the one-on-ones made, that he did less firefighting, he was delegating better, his trust in his direct reports, not only their trust in him, but his trust in them got much stronger, and it allows him to take on more strategic work. I loved his quote at the bottom.
Yeah.
If you don't have time for one-on-ones, you don't have time to grow your organization.
What I like about Ryan's story is when we first introduced the idea, it was such a shock to think of how he was going to get all of this scheduled in, and it just had no way that he would understand the value of it. But he went into it, we recommend it. And once he got into it, he realized the relationship depth that he was creating, and if all the meetings Ryan has today, the direct reports would not allow this one to be canceled.
And it's cool. You could kind of see it in the workshop. Ryan was just soaking everything up like it's Monday. He was so excited, like he couldn't wait to go back and start putting these things in place. So for him to get that immediate immediate gratification from doing the one-on-ones, we're proud of you, Ryan. Thanks for that.
We got a couple of questions here we're going to get to in a second, but one of the things we'd recommend as you're wrapping up here, go ahead and get going. Start some way, somehow. If it isn't weekly, make it every other week. If it isn't all your direct reports, focus on a couple of key superstars. Take advantage of the resources that we've made available for you on our webcast page. Download the ebook on all the different parts of the one-on-one. And if you need some personal help, we can certainly help you as well.
Yeah, and it's okay to be honest with your direct report, saying, look, this is a new format for me. This might feel clunky at first, but both of us will figure out how to make the most out of this.
There's nothing better to build trust than to be vulnerable. And there's nothing easier to become vulnerable for a leader to admit in that first couple of one-on-ones that this isn't comfortable for them either.
Yep. So
here's a QR code. This will take you to a form that you can use that will allow you to download the ebook on one-on-ones. The form will also give you an opportunity to give us some feedback, whether how we might be able to improve these sessions. And there's a space in there where you can talk about some wins that you've had as well.
And is this the last slide? No. There's more, right?
Well, this is where I think I want to deal with a couple of questions here. Okay.
Okay. Well, just so you know, before we wrap, we're also going to we're starting to try to plan ahead. So you should be able to get a heads up like 3 months in advance about what our next webcasts are going to be, in case you or your favorite friends, all of a sudden I can't talk, want to join us. What are questions?
A couple of questions that we have. What if you have so many direct reports that it's impractical to be able to do them weekly?
I think we go back to rule of thumb, no more than 5 to 8 direct reports. So to some extent, you may have to start thinking about restructuring things so that it's more practical, but you can't possibly give all of your direct reports what they need if you have significantly more than 8. So in this case, start with the superstars that you know are going to report to you long term, and then think about how perhaps you can restructure. We're also up for chatting through that. It's probably one of the most difficult conversations because it feels like a demotion to people when you say, you can't report to me anymore. But we want to make sure you have everything you need from the leader you have.
And we have had some leaders who have a lot of direct reports, more than 10, where
and a couple were at DeMarco,
where they did them every other week. That's not ideal, but if that's the only way that you can get into it, getting 2 meetings a month is better than nothing.
Together.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you can't do them weekly, then shoot for every other week, but then you can't miss them. You got to get 2 a month in.
True.
I got another question. Does it make sense to do one-on-ones with part-time employees or contractors?
Gosh, we have some part-time employees. They're actual employees, been with us for decades in some cases. And yeah, it's really important now because they're part-time. I do schedule some of them every other week. But those are at least as critical. If the relationship is, or if the situation is relationship based and they're part-time, how much more important to understand what are the other competing priorities they're trying to juggle and balance at the time. If it's a contractor where they're really more a vendor and it's project related and there's no relationship really involved, you probably don't have to do your one-on-ones. But when it relies on the relationship, the dedication and the passion into your culture and your business, for sure.
Yeah. The bottom line is, if you need trust in a relationship, do a one-on-one, whether it's part-time, contractor, full-time. That's
we didn't do that with guys building the house, but we brought them muffins and fresh coffee every morning.
So thanks for attending. Next month, we're going to be talking about scorecarding and how that can be used through the hiring process and for new hires. April, we're going to talk a little bit about assessments within the hiring process. May is going to be 360s for leadership development. And then one I'm looking forward to in June is how to use EQ for high potentials in developing them.
So thank you all for attending. And boy, this felt like a lightning round, trying to wrap up in time to get to the airport. So thanks all of you for hanging out. I see a lot of people have already filled out the give us feedback form, and hopefully you're getting your download of the ebook rather quickly. And we'll look forward to seeing you next month, if not before. So have a great one. Do
Hi,
some
guys.
one-on-ones.